This is Steve Downs, the voice of Master Chief, Sierra 117, and you're listening to Podcast Unlocked, the world's #1 Xbox podcast. Now, finish this fight. Master Chief, out.
Podcast Unlocked, episode 445, this one for May 26, 2020. Ryan McCaffrey joined by Miranda Sanchez.
Hello.
And, of course, plug your ears, Destin Legary.
Bam! Hey, everybody.
Yay.
Hey, guys, good to see you. Brandon Tyrell is hard at work on IGN's Summer of Gaming, which, by the way, launches next week. So he is neck deep. It would be too conservative. He's completely buried. There's like maybe one hand thrusting through that's through the surface, but he's hanging in there, doing a lot of hard work along with our production team. In fact, really most of the team, putting together, our attempt to try to bring home a little bit of E3 in light of the lack of E3 and the lack of our ability to go anywhere and see a bunch of games all in one place. So stay tuned for all of that next week. The schedule is now public. So take a look at that on IGN.com, or you can find it on any of IGN's social media channels as well. Miranda, Minecraft Dungeons is out. It feels like it's been a long ride, but it's here. It's finally out.
Yeah, I'm super excited to finally dig into it. We do have somebody working on our guide. It is not me, unfortunately, but I am very excited to see what she has put together. So if you guys need any sort of game help, especially if you have younger players who maybe need a little extra assistance on like finding ways to defeat all the mobs or see like what sort of loot you can get, definitely check out our guide.
Perfect. And then the IGN review is up. It's by Seth Macy, who was just on the podcast here, 2 or 3 shows back. He's given it a 7. So if you want to learn all the details, hit up IGN's YouTube to watch his video review, or head on over to IGN.com to read his written review. Another quick reminder, I want to plug IGN Unfiltered again because it is with the very Xbox-tastic Marcus Leto. He of longtime Bungie fame, the creator of Master Chief, the longtime art director at Bungie, and game director on Halo Reach. So please do check that out on, again, IGN YouTube, or in this case as well, any of IGN. Well, there's an IGN Unfiltered podcast so you can subscribe to, just like you probably subscribe to Unlocked podcast. All right, housekeeping out of the way. Let's get to the news first. Destin Legary, you've been just as excited as anybody else for next gen. You were all in very early on the Xbox One X on your 4K TV. You've been raring to go for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you will be particularly excited at this first story. inXile, one of the more recent Microsoft Studio acquisitions, has confirmed that they will be using the now much hyped Unreal Engine 5 for their RPG project.
Wait a minute. Unreal Engine 5 isn't just for the PS5? I can't believe it.
I know, right? The media lied to you. No, that didn't happen at all. It's all fine.
The power of Unreal Engine 5 is astounding. It looks absolutely phenomenal. I'm really, really stoked that we got to see it on a console, regardless of which console it was. And I'm really, really happy to hear that people are like, hey, yeah, it's going to be on Xbox Series X also. So props inXile. Thank you for the quote. We definitely appreciate the clarity.
Yeah,
I'm not being sarcastic. I'm genuinely saying.
You've dialed in the series. Yeah, they said they will indeed be using Unreal Engine 5 for our next project. Studio head Brian Fargo confirming on Twitter that its next-gen RPG will use Unreal Engine 5. I mean, that part's certainly not surprising, given that, of course, inXile, that's their whole bread and butter is RPGs. That's probably why Microsoft bought them. So to hear that they're doing a next-gen RPG is, in and of itself, not a surprise. But to me, what I wanted to throw to you guys here to talk about is, to me, this just little tidbit that inXile and Brian Fargo have given us is pretty strong evidence that these internal studios that Microsoft has recently acquired are going to be getting additional resources for their projects, because inXile right now is working on finishing up Wasteland 3, which is out at the end of August. And that game, with all due respect, it's not exactly running on the highest octane technology. It's using Unity, which, yes, Unity has made some beautiful stuff. Don't get me wrong. Some of my favorite games run on Unity. Firewatch is a gorgeous game that runs on Unity. Just as a quick off the top of my head example, but to Unity, I think, does not quite have the ceiling. I know I'm going to get like artists and programmers maybe mad at me. I don't know, but it seems to me as a layperson gamer that Unreal Engine has a higher ceiling to it than Unity does in terms of the quality of production that you can make. And so here, I mean, that means what I'm trying to say is, if UE5 is going to be inXile's next engine for their next RPG, I got to figure that also means that they're going to be probably staffing up, getting more resources, more budget to be thrown at their next game, which again will suggest that that Microsoft is putting money into these studios now and not just saying, well, we bought you and keep doing exactly what you were doing exactly the same way you were doing it, Miranda.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I would hope so, because like the idea too is like whenever you get behind like one of these big publishers, right? Like you're one of the big three, you're part of them now. You
Yeah.
hope that you get some resources with that as well, and I would assume that is the case. And I think even though like maybe I can't speak to like what Unity is capable of, but we've already seen what a real Unreal Engine 5 can do, at least to an extent, with a tech demo. And just hearing that, oh yes, we are being associated with this. Yes, this is something that we are looking forward to. Is I think reassuring to people who don't necessarily know what the scope is of each of these engines. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's now Destin, I also have to wonder then, if you kind of look around, all right, if inXile is going to be using UE5. Now Microsoft's not like EA, they don't force every studio to use some internal engine. Of course,
Yeah.
Halo's running on Slipspace. Let's see, Forza, both Forzas run on the same A and B versions of proprietary in-house tech. You've got well, who else is? I mean, I guess we could drill on down the list, but like the one that comes to mind for me after reading this bit about inXile is Double Fine. Like Double Fine's a studio, again, always super creative, but they haven't made a big budget game really since Brutal Legend. And okay, Psychonauts 2 is a bigger project than Double Fine has done in a while, but I think with all due respect, I wouldn't necessarily call it like a AAA caliber kind of on that top tier first party level. But now I have to wonder if somebody like a Double Fine is also going to be getting a lot of additional resources and technologies for whatever their next project is after Psychonauts 2, which by the way I am super looking forward to.
I mean, I bet they will. It seems like Microsoft's being really supportive of their studios, and obviously they recognize that the games are going to move. The games are the things that they want to try and sell the most, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think I read this online, but Unreal is also expanding to allow more people access to it, where you have to make a certain amount of profit before they start charging you for the license fees. Is that correct, Ryan? Do you remember reading
Yeah,
that?
I don't have it in front of me, but I believe you're correct. I read the same thing where they did revise their, I guess, just for lack of a better term, their terms of their arrangement for anyone that wants to use Unreal Engine to let developers keep a little bit more upfront.
Yeah, I'll Google it really quick, but I mean, to me, that's really exciting. It means more power for people across the board, and it's going to allow for more creativity just for everybody, and that's really exciting for me. Hopefully, we get some innovators, some movers and shakers that create something really, really special.
Yeah, I seem to recall, and you might want to Google this for me too. I seem to recall years ago, like quite a number of years ago now, 360 era at some point, that Microsoft actually signed a studio license with Epic so that anyone in the Microsoft portfolio could use Unreal. And then, of course, we've seen that the things kind of fell apart first party wise for Microsoft, and also Epic since then had revised, because it used to be, I guess I should preface this, it used to be you'd have to just pay a bunch of money, a licensing fee, to use a game engine. It was in the 90s, it was id Tech, like the Quake engine, and Unreal was certainly in there in the mix, and you would pay to use that engine. And the structuring, the licensing agreements have changed over the years. As you know, like Unity is free, and CryEngine I think has pretty generous terms, and Unreal in recent years has done that as well. Have you found that?
I have the number here. Unreal is royalty free until a game makes $1 million.
That's great.
So yeah, once it does $1 million in revenue, then they start charging. So you're talking like the big budgets are going to hit that pretty quick, but that opens up a whole new playing field for a lot of people, a lot of creators, and that's really exciting.
No, that's really great to see. So yeah, so in case you're wondering, Xbox fans, yes, Xbox will be using Unreal Engine 5. It's going to work great. It's going to look great. And I should add too, I did interview Brian Fargo for IGN's Icons series. It's a sort of a spotlight with a number of awesome creators coming up. I think they'll be sprinkled in throughout the summer of gaming. So shot one with Brian Fargo last week. So look for that. And we did actually talk about the sort of what their next project might look like. Not in any sort of specific terms, but enough that you might find interesting. Next this week, Take-Two Interactive, they are the parent company of 2K and Rockstar, has a whole bunch of games on the way in the next generation, which is great to see. Take-Two Interactive, the parent company for game developers like Rockstar and 2K Games, announced that while the coming year will be light in terms of releases, it is planning to release 93 titles over the next 5 years, including games from across its many studios. Blah, 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 blah. Industry analyst Daniel Ahmad, do you like how I summed that up?
Yeah,
Daniel
absolutely.
Ahmad broke it down, saying the 93 titles are defined as 63 core experiences, 17 mid-core games, and 12 casual/arcade games. So, Miranda, what do you make of this? 2K is a major publisher, but they've been actually, by and large, pretty quiet this generation.
So you said quite a few games. Like there's a lot of games. It's like this is 93. That is so many games.
That's a ton. Yeah.
I'm surprised that they're like, hey guys, we have 63 core experiences, which I mean, I guess they're trying to say games that more people would play. It's really hard to like gauge what they're trying to say by core experiences. It's like, oh, right. And then what's mid-core? Like if you're trying to kind of just split them up between like, these are games that you'd look for on console, and these are the games that you look for like casual/mobile is what I'm hearing for casual arcade. And so it's like, are the 17 mid-core games you don't care about? Like, what does that mean?
Just hopping on their website, I was asking the same question, Miranda, and looking at a few of their properties. You got Borderlands, XCOM, WWE, NBA, Civilization, Carnival Games, Golf Club, BioShock. What else we got here? Trying to the Mafia franchise.
NBA 2K, did you say that already? WWE?
Yep. Battleborn, NHL, Civ Beyond Earth, the Evolve franchise. They decided to bring that back in a new way. And Sid Meier, they have a lot to work with, like IP wise.
Part of me, I don't really know. It's I guess Carnival Games could be a mid-core.
Yeah. Whereas like Civilization for iPad would probably be maybe more of the casual. Although I don't know, Civilization's anything but a casual game.
Yeah, like that's the hard thing is like pinpointing these. And I wonder also too how many of these are actually new versus re-releases, because we also saw that they're doing a lot of the collections for Switch coming up here soon. So it's gonna be BioShock and Borderlands and all of those. So like, are they counting those as titles?
No, this is I think this is for after.
Right, for after, but I'm saying that could still happen. It could still do collections for next gen or something and say, look at these new games as part of all of our titles. But even that being said, like they do have a lot of really great licenses that I think they could work with, and that could be very exciting. And of course, we also want new things too. So that's part of the hope.
And I don't even think we've really talked about GTA yet. Obviously, GTA is on that list, right?
Yes, the definitely the elephant in the room, although that implies a bad thing. It's totally a good thing. Yes, that might outsell the other 92 games combined.
I would bet money on that. Do you think we get another Red Dead?
Not in the next 5 years. That I would also bet money on that.
Yeah.
I think this will be seriously like 93 games the next 5 years. One from Rockstar. One. It'll be GTA 6, and that's it. That's just how they
Yeah.
work now, and it's
For sure.
been working great for gamers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think them just keeping focused and doing their own dev cycle, perfect. Just let them do that.
Yeah, so they're we know that they're early in production. That's obvious. We talked about when that news broke that I definitely think GTA 6 will be out in the next 5 years, considering they've probably already been on it for a year and a half, even the better part of 2 years already. So I suspect the next 3 years or so. But yeah, you guys mentioned some of the NBA and WWE coming out of Visual Concepts. You mentioned Mafia from Hangar 13. There's the new studios from Michael Condrey, formerly of Sledgehammer, and before that, Visceral with Dead Space.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the new BioShock team. So we know
Story,
that's thank you. Yes, there's that's happening. And then of course remember Ken Levine has been quietly doing something since BioShock Infinite. If you guys remember, you got to go way back at this point. BioShock Infinite came out spring 2013. Gosh, wow, 7 years. It's been 7 years since BioShock Infinite. And then not long after, the game did well, but it was so expensive. The budget on it was so high that they ended up kind of spinning down the studio, not closing it, but they effectively laid off all but about 20 people. It was Ken and then a group of people that were left that started off on a separate, smaller project. And then they ended up just renaming the studio so it's not Irrational anymore. So if he's still there and doing something, that's probably in the mix on this as well. So go ahead, Miranda.
So yeah, that was founded 3 years ago. So we haven't heard anything out of that team. So according to Wikipedia, it's about 25 people for Ghost Story Games is that entire studio. So if they are working on something bigger with a very small team, I could see it taking a long time. But I'm really curious if they're going to announce anything anytime soon because it has been 3 years. But again, if it is a really small team, it could take a while.
Maybe that's one of the mid-core games, if it's like a sort of smaller team that clearly has talent there, but maybe that's going to be kind of a medium scope game as opposed to something that's the size of BioShock Infinite or one of the mainline Mafia games, something like that. But yeah, I'm glad to see 2K / Take-Two / Rockstar kind of stepping up their game a little bit, because I don't know about you guys. I think they've always been a pretty high quality publisher. They haven't always, their stuff doesn't always hit. I mean, Evolve is a good example. They were the kind of the first big 4v1 game. And yes, it was flawed. I think their messaging was flawed, but the game was good. The Destin, you mentioned Firaxis, the Sid Meier stuff and XCOM are just there. I feel like
XCOM's phenomenal.
Yeah. Firaxis is like the Forza for 2K, where it's always consistently good, whether it's the XCOM stuff or the Sid Meier Civilization stuff. It's always good. So it's like you almost don't get super excited about it because it's just, yep, here comes another good game from those guys.
Unless you Dan, then you're just probably bouncing off the walls in a way we've never seen before.
Yeah, and it's really exciting for me anytime we're going into a new console generation because we often get new IPs during that time period. And I was just talking to you off air, Ryan, about how much I love the original Assassin's Creed because it established the whole new IP. We're going into Valhalla now, like the 14th Assassin's Creed. There's been a lot of them, and they've tried mobile, they've tried Game Boy Game Boy Advance and all these different platforms for that franchise, and it's still going. And I would love this to be sort of a new era of all new IPs because Battle Royales are great, Apex is great, but I really love story-driven games, and I think 2K does that fairly well. Like look at they're remastering Mafia, for example, and that was definitely highly regarded for its storytelling at the time of its release back in 2000. I want to say we talked about it.
Yeah. Before that even for the first.
Yeah, that's gonna be like a whole new experience. So I'm really, really excited about the original Mafia personally.
So
and whatever else comes.
We'll see what that means, I mean, basically that means we literally have to start getting a bunch of game announcements from Take-Two and
Mhm.
2K before too much longer. If they've got 93 games, that's a lot of stuff that they're going to have to announce here in the not too distant future. All right, next this week, uh, new reports suggest that this year's Call of Duty game, shocking news, I know, will be titled Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War and will return to the aforementioned setting, the Cold War setting that we've seen that Black Ops 1 was a part of. So the title, Black Ops Cold War, was posted by a known Call of Duty leaker who goes by Okami on Twitter and backed up by sources of Eurogamer. Eurogamer added that it will return to the series' roots, but didn't specify any events or locations. Of course, now real life in Cold War was by about 47 to 91, according to our write up on this. So whether this is a prequel to the whole Black Ops game series or just its own standalone thing in there, or even potentially a reboot in the same way that Modern Warfare was last year remains to be seen. But Miranda, are you down for more Black Ops? Or as a big Call of Duty fan, are you kind of done with Black Ops? We've had a lot of them.
So they've had, I think, the best success with Modern Warfare and the Black Ops series. You have a great note here talking about the other experiments, such as Advanced Warfare and World War II. World War II, I think, was great, but it was just that. It just needed to be that game, and you didn't need any more of it. I didn't need more of that protagonist. We had our story, and we're done. Ghosts, let's not even talk about it. They ended that on a cliffhanger, and I never won another game again.
I don't think you have to worry about that.
Yeah, I don't think they'd ever revisit that. So if they do kind of want to go back and revisit these very notable games, I can understand that. I don't know if they have a reason to try something super new. Like, what do they gain by gambling that, right? Like, if you can keep with these two franchises, like I think they could do something different. But by keeping with these two different series, I think they can ping pong on very different points in time. So if they do a Black Ops Cold War and set it as like more of a prequel series, then you kind of get your like historical fiction side to it, right? Like if they kind of just try to do something a little bit more inventive with it. And the Cold War is very cool. Like it's actually one of my favorite points in history. I took a Cold War science history class in college, and it was one of my favorite classes. And like, there's so much cool science that's developed there. And like, you know, you have the nuclear arms race, and then you have all like the space stuff. Like, there's just so much there that you can really dig into. I think if you have that, and then you do Modern Warfare doing its own thing with kind of like obviously modern warfare and maybe beyond that, I think it could be a really interesting dynamic between those two to give variety to Call of Duty, but not also trying to push them into places where they don't need to be.
Yeah.
So I think this could be really good. I'm interested. I like the Cold War, as I just said. So
cool. Yeah, I mean, I was very interested in your perspective because you are, if not the biggest Call of Duty fan at IGN, you're right in the top 2 or 3. You love the series, and
yeah,
as I said before, I'm just in it for the campaigns at this point. So Black Ops 4 was totally not my jam because it had no single player campaign. But Miranda, you and I tag teamed on the Modern Warfare review last fall, and you really enjoyed the multiplayer by and large, and I very much enjoyed the campaign. It was really well put together. So my concern here with this project is, again, just trying to be realistic about things.
right.
We say a million times, and we'll say it a million more. We're not game developers. We don't know how hard it is, but we know it's really hard, even from our ignorant perspectives on that, having never done it ourselves. But I preface that to say that we know from a Jason Schreier report last fall, I believe it was the fall, sometime last year, that this game was moved up. This Treyarch game, Black Ops Cold War, was moved forward. It was pulled in because you guys know, of course, it was on 3 dev team cycles. Every 3 dev teams, each one got 3 years to make their game. It was on that path for quite a while there, but that has seemingly, at least for now, ended because Sledgehammer kind of fell apart. Not literally, like the studio's not closed, but per that Schreier report, they were taken off of their Call of Duty that would have hit this year, and instead Treyarch was had their timeline moved in, and so we're getting the this Black Ops Cold War game. So I just worry. I hope that both certainly campaign and multiplayer, I just hope things aren't super rushed, because it's game development's got to be super tough as it is. But when you thought you would have 3 years and then get a year taken away, I can't even imagine how difficult that is for a
I mean,
development team.
absolutely. And like even just throwing bodies at a project like that, that's not going to fix that you're losing time. Like it takes time to develop a good story. It takes time to iterate. It takes time to like go through all the processes and testing these ideas and like, does this actually work through the game? Even if you have people like all around the world working on one thing, it's still going to take a lot of time. I mean, again, just look at Stars games, right? They're a huge studio with a bunch of time and a bunch of money, and all of that goes together. Especially just the time, the amount of time that they have to really focus and try these things out and really develop, obviously goes a long way for them. And I'm not saying that they could do this. I mean, honestly, Call of Duty sells so much every year. I would really wonder what if they gave like a big team just like, hey, you guys have all the time you need to make a new Call of Duty, like reinvent Call of Duty or something, or like figure out like what Call of Duty is in its essence. That'd be really cool to see. But I don't think we're going to ever get that because, to your point, Ryan, like they got to put out a game every year. And I don't think they're going to stop with that because just of how much it sells every single year. And so I think it is very right to worry about the quality of this one if it is going to be a rush turnaround. And I also personally worry for like the team that's on this game. Like I'm mostly worried that's like, are they just like pushing them to like work more to get this done? Like that's my biggest concern. It's like we already know like a 3-year cycle on these. That's fast turnaround. And granted, like Call of Duty changes quite a bit between its settings, but like the core of what it is doesn't necessarily change too much. But still, putting a game together is super hard. And so like I really hope that the team that is on this, like whatever they're working with, maybe they're working with assets or things that were from the Sledgehammer game that they're putting together, and hopefully that they can use things to go forward with it. But I do hope it turns out well if it is end up being something that only got 2 years in development.
Yeah, you make a great point about maybe there are we don't have the full story. We have a piece of the story, but yeah, you're right. Maybe there are assets that can be reused and or I guess not reused, but assets that were set aside that can now be put back into service, hopefully.
Right.
But and it's funny, you said something else too that I thought was really interesting about reinventing at some point, having to reinvent Call of Duty by maybe taking a team and just giving them a whole ton of time and let them completely reinvent it from scratch. And I think that might be the only reasonable way forward at some point, because it's hard to argue against Activision right now in as far as we could sit here and go, oh, they're just going to alternate Modern Warfare and Black Ops every other year until the end of time, and that's going to get really fatiguing and boring and not exciting, and will the sales eventually trail off? But to what you were saying earlier, Ghosts, Advanced Warfare, World War II, they were not sustainable or were not intended to be sustainable as their own sort of sub-series. And so here now we're left with Black Ops and Modern Warfare. So it's at some point, something's got to give. Either the sales will start to trail off as people get sick of those, or you got to give them more time to reinvent it, something. So I wonder how Activision is going to handle the future of this franchise, if they'll try to either bring in or build up a new third team that's not Sledgehammer to try and bring in something new, or take the reins on one or the other to give Treyarch or Infinity Ward time to go off and completely rethink and reinvent it. I don't know. It's a really fascinating franchise, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I kind of feel like they're Marvel movies, like to do like more of a modern equivalent of what it is. Like they're popcorn movies. They're really fun. There's something to it that you love having an event around, and then it expires and you move on to the next one, right? And I think that's kind of what these are. And I think that has a valuable place in gaming, but it's just like, how long do you keep sustaining it? How long can you make this thing that you have interesting? And I think there are a lot of stories to tell, but yeah, I do think at some point they will need to try to reintroduce new ideas or new stories, and honestly, I like new gameplay things because I think the time to kill, just like these fast, you can be a one-man army. Like, there's just a lot of very iconic things about specifically Call of Duty multiplayer that I could get into. I feel like I could write a whole essay on like why this is really important, and like why it shouldn't change too much. But like subtly reinventing things, like just making something interesting about it every year is really important. And I think if you do just ping pong between two titles, it's going to be pretty tough to do that. But I feel like if they did, but I think they do have to go back to the 3 studio thing. Like, I think they do. It keeps it more interesting.
I never really thought about them as like the video game equivalents of MCU movies, but that's a great analogy. You're totally spot on with that. It's I never thought about it that way. I like that.
Yeah, because it's an event, right? And it's something that everyone gets into, regardless of how much you care about comic books or whatever it may be. Regardless of how much you care about video games, there are always going to be those people who say, it's time for Call of Duty. Like, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to buy my Mountain Dew, I'm going to buy my Doritos, we're going to hunker down for the weekend, we're going to have a great time. And that's just like what it is. It's just an event. I do that every single year. I review it. I go get my big old bag of Doritos, I get my Mountain Dew, and I have a good time. I've been doing this since I was in high school. And it's just a thing. And it's comforting because it is still that thing. And it's really interesting to me. Okay, I'm sorry, we're gonna like this very big Call of Duty tangent. But
this is great.
I really love seeing the different kinds of players for Call of Duty, because some people do like that really more modern, fast-paced setting for Call of Duty, and that brings in maybe hero abilities and like different things that really play with the multiplayer. But then people also like the very clean cut classic. There are no abilities, there are no characters. You just have you have your weapons, and you have kill streaks, and you go at it. And it's really cool to see how that changes so much. And I think maybe having different multiplayers for those different kinds of people every other year or so, or every 3 years, is really good to keep their community very like engaged and interested in like these different releases that they have. So I do think they need to have that variety in some way. And again, going back to it, having something kind of set in Cold War era, especially earlier on, does give you that space to have more historical fiction sort of stuff. Whereas if you do Modern Warfare and maybe a third series that's a little bit more futuristic or a little bit different, then you kind of get to play in those like other spaces as well. So anyway, Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. Well, this may be sacrilege to some viewers, but Black Ops 1 is my favorite Call of Duty campaign ever. Just edging out Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. I love Black Ops 1, and the campaign was great. Yeah, the story was great, and the twist at the end was fantastic. All right, let's move on. We've still got a couple more news items to run through for you. First, games with gold for June. Destin, what are we downloading?
Looks like Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. That's available June 1st to 30th. It's $19.99 ERP usually. Coffee Talk.
Doesn't matter. It's free with your gold subscription.
Yep. And then we got Coffee Talk, which is regularly $13.99. That's from June 16th to July 15th.
I'm excited for that one.
Welcome to Coffee Talk. Anybody at Saturday Night Live?
I
you guys are too young.
Destroy All Humans. That's available June 1st to 15th on Xbox One and 360. Don't sleep on that. Definitely pick up Destroy All Humans. Very, very fun. And Cine Mora, available June 16th to 30th. I apologize if I butchered that name. That's on Xbox One and 360. And No Man's Sky hits Game Pass in June. So that's a good deal. That could definitely be a game you sink time into.
Yeah, I'll say. Interesting move with Destroy All Humans, with I suppose THQ putting that out, because they've got a remake coming out pretty soon.
Yeah.
It's like, are you sure you want to give this away for free when you have kind of the same game coming out for money later this year? But all right, we'll see how Destroy All Humans lands.
It'll be cool to see them side by side, like see the improvements that they've made. Yeah. And the new one looks pretty good.
It's been huge on IGN, man. People are very eager to see it. Like it seems to fall into that pocket of like early to mid 2000s nostalgia where people just remember it fondly from the PS2 and original Xbox. And
people love crypto.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how it's aged. Because not everything from that era ages well. Sometimes it's best left in your brain, but it might just be super fun and be, because it's, nobody's really making games like that now.
Yeah.
So it might be a both nostalgic and a breath of fresh air at the same time. Next this week, System Shock 3. This one has been one I've been keeping a very close eye on. It is continuing. They had some sort of weird, like, is this canceled? Is it not? But it's going to move on with different developers. So Other Side Entertainment had been developing it. They have announced that Tencent, yes, the mega conglomerate Tencent, will take over the System Shock franchise from Other Side, who was based out of Boston. In a short message to followers on Twitter, Other Side announced that, quote, Tencent will be taking the franchise forward. As a smaller indie studio, it has been challenging for us to carry the project on our own. We believe Tencent's deep capabilities and expertise as a leading game company will bring the franchise to new heights. We had Night Dive involved in remaking the original System Shock, but System Shock 3 was also in development because 2, I'll tell you guys, if you've never played it, System Shock 2 is probably a top 10, maybe top 15 at the worst game of all time for me. System Shock 2 is an incredible emergent role-playing game, which is, it's now I want to play it now that I'm thinking about it. But have either of you had a chance to play any System Shock over the years?
I have not.
I have
That's
not,
one on my list.
unfortunately.
Okay.
Even though I love BioShock, and people are like, oh, if you love BioShock, you should play System Shock. And I'm like, oh, but it looks really spooky.
It's spookier than BioShock is. It's not a horror. I wouldn't classify at least System Shock 2 as a horror game, but it definitely has those kind of creepy undertones. Like, I guess the way I would compare that to like Gone Home, Miranda, is, I don't know about you, like, were you terrified the entire time you played Gone Home?
I was very scared. Yes. It was so good at setting the mood of being like, there's going to be something there, man. I don't know. And then,
Gone Home's totally not a horror game, but I was freaked out the whole time I was playing that game. And System Shock 2 is a little bit like that, and it kind of makes you think there's always something there, and on occasion there is. So it's a little bit freakier than Gone Home in that regard, whereas Gone Home, sorry if you've never played it, there's never anything actually scary that happens. But I'm glad you said that, Miranda, because when BioShock was in development, of course, BioShock is made by the same people that made System Shock 2, Ken Levine and the Irrational team. It was sort of regarded as, BioShock is like the spiritual successor to System Shock 2. Mm-hmm. And so System Shock 3 was a lot of those original people from the OG System Shock, including Warren Spector, one of the greatest game designers of all time. And so that's, I got to say, I'm a little, no offense to Tencent, but
okay,
go ahead, please.
I'm very confused because I tried to find what is Tencent developing,
right?
Because it's really hard to find that. All you see is like, well, they have a lot of money. That's about it. It's like, well, we own Riot and we made that fake or that knockoff version of League of Legends, but Tencent owns them anyway, so it doesn't matter and they can do whatever they want. But it's like, when you think about like great game developers, you don't think Tencent, you think, well, they have money. And so I'm very, very curious to see how that goes. It'd be a good surprise if it actually turns out really well, but
exactly right. That's exactly it. It's for me, I was excited about System Shock 3 specifically because Warren Spector was involved and some of these original creators were involved. And now that they are not going to be, sure, we've seen other developers come along and do an IP justice. Look at like the new Doom. That, yes, it was still the same studio, but it was almost none of the same people. Yeah. So it's not impossible for System Shock 3 to turn out great, but Warren Spector does not hop in the director's chair for a game that often these days. It's just he's not. He's done a lot in his career, and this was the first kind of big project from him in a long time. So I was super psyched about it, and now I'm kind of like, I don't know. They're gonna have to win me all over again, really.
Yeah,
Before I was already won over.
right. I mean, most of what I've seen them as far as developing is pretty much like free to play mobile games of different of IPs and stuff, and it's just a little questionable. But I guess this is their thing of like, hey, look, we're making a big game. Let's see what they can do. I guess.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, Destin, did you have anything else, or shall we move on to the loot box?
No, let's go to loot box.
All right,
That
let's
one's
do
fun.
it. So, yeah, we're starting to run short on time. Tom Watson from Pingree Grove, Illinois asks this of you guys. With so many great games being released, it's easy to build a backlog. Don't get me wrong, it's a great problem, and he uses the quotes on problem to have. But I own games that were released last year that I haven't touched. How do all of you choose what game is that you next choose to dive into, and what games get set aside? Destin.
Yeah, this one's actually kind of tough because like I find myself just replaying my favorites, like games that I know I'm really going to enjoy. Like I just replayed Assassin's Creed 1. I often will play through Mass Effect 1 again, and those games are starting to show their age. So more recently, I've been trying to find like new favorites that I keep going back to. And I was kind of wondering, like I never really pressure myself to play a game. If I'll try it out for a little bit, and for me, I like to sort of, this might sound weird to people, but I really like to get in a good headspace where I can just be calm and relax and really immerse myself in the world, to be cheesy about it. So like, headphones, just kind of shut off the world and just really get into it. And like the reason I never started like Death Stranding, for example, was because I never got to a point where I had enough time to give it the time that it would deserve to get a good impression of it. So that's on my backlog. And how do I decide what to play? That's just a tough question. I find that time when I can do that, and then I play it, especially for new IPs. I like to give new IPs a shot.
Miranda, how about you?
Sort of a heady answer, sorry.
No, I like that.
No, it's tough. Sometimes I just decide based on work, which is a weird thing. And as I think, obviously not a problem everyone's going to have. It just, I need to prioritize based on what's going to be most important for work. Like, I think if there's a game that I think will be or could be up for a game of the year consideration, and maybe not a lot of people are playing it, and I've heard good things about it, I will prioritize that because I feel like it's our job to try to seek out these smaller games maybe, or just like lesser known games, and play them and make sure that they have a fair shot for game of the year or any of our award categories. So I make it a priority to go find those games and play them, especially because I do have like a rather nice-ish PC, and I can handle some of the games that are only on PC or other different platforms. So it's kind of tough. And then also just based on my mood, honestly. I juggle a lot of ongoing games. So like obviously like Dota, and now I got back into Apex, and then I'm playing Animal Crossing still. And so it's like that's 3 games that are just the same thing every time. And it makes it, I feel guilty for that sometimes, honestly, because it's like, oh, I need to be exposing myself to more games, or I should be doing different things. But that's how I relax. That's how I want unwind and how I spend time with friends. So those are still important. So I try to mix in other games. So I'm like now using my stream to revisit old games that I really love. And then I also try to use part of my time to just sit down and like, it's kind of like Dustin, like really immerse myself in a game and just like let that be part of my focus, and just work it into the rotation. And I guess that one just comes down to like either work priority or my mood.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right with you guys. It's when it's my choice, because like I said, Miranda, sometimes it's you have a work influenced decision to make about what you're playing. But when it's my choice, it's a purely emotional decision. It's what am I in the mood for? Like sometimes I just want to shoot some stuff. So maybe like I'll log on to Halo multiplayer or fire up Doom again. And sometimes like no, I don't want to. I just want to relax, like you were saying, Destin, and I might choose something more narrative based, story based, something that's a little less gameplay intensive and more story heavy. So yeah, it's we are spoiled as gamers. Like we have so many great video games to play at all times. I would say the one that I'm trying to get to right now, amidst things have been pretty busy. I just came off of one review, and so maybe I'll be able to get back to it now. But I my confession is I actually never played Hellblade. So now I want to do that. And apparently it's only like 6 hours long, which is great for me. So I am looking forward to playing that so that I'm up to speed on it and ready to go for Hellblade 2.
I did about half a Hellblade, Ryan, and I was very pleasantly surprised. I got stuck about halfway through on a puzzle because its puzzle mechanics are really, really cool. We'll have to talk about it more once you've dove in.
Yeah, it'll be good. All right, if anybody out there has a loot box question, please send it into the panel. The email address is unlocked@ign.com. All right, let's see here. Speed run through the Unlock Block trivia from Scott in Omaha, who asks this. With talk of smart delivery, it got him Scott says, it got me thinking of waiting to play certain games until the 360 version came out. So he's backing up a couple generations. So he asks, which of these Xbox 360 launch titles did not also have an original Xbox version? So one of these is just a 360 game. The other three were available on both original Xbox and the Xbox 360. Your choices are Gun, Peter Jackson's King Kong, Amped 3, or Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. Now, do either of you think you know it?
I might.
Miranda?
Nope. This time period is so hard for me. So I think I remember some things, but definitely not all of this. I have a guess.
All right, well, I'm going to go your way first since Destin seems to be, he seems reasonably confident.
Okay, so I remember playing Amped, but I don't remember which one or when. And I feel like the King Kong game might have been on both just because licensed properties sometimes are just cross the line because they can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with Gun.
Gun, okay. Neversoft.
No,
that was the Tony Hawk, same studio that made Tony Hawk. Neversoft. Destin, what do you think?
I'm going to go Tony Hawk.
Dang it.
All right. Well, another week of not awarding any points.
What?
Which
it was
one was it?
3.
Amped?
Yeah.
Really?
Gun.
Okay.
Gun. What's funny about these? So yeah, Gun and Tony Hawk were actually both the same developer, and they had the. And if you remember back then, original Xbox games were $50, and it was with the 360 PS3 generation that games went to $60. So you were basically paying $10 more for Tony Hawk and for Gun, and for Peter Jackson's King Kong, to play it in HD. So it was like a $10 HD tax. But yeah, those three were all on both. Amp 3 was not. So nice job, Scott from Omaha, on stumping everybody.
Nice
and again, if anybody out there has an Xbox trivia question, I'd love to hear it. Unlocked@ign.com. Please include 4 multiple choice answers and note the correct one in your email. All right, let's hit the road. I guess I'll give a quick plug first. You can follow me on Twitter if you are so inclined. I'm at DMC_Ryan. My review of Saints Row the Third Remastered is up. And then otherwise, yeah, just a lot of like prep work for future cool things. I'm shooting an Unfiltered tomorrow, which I'm very excited about. So I'll leave it at that. Miranda.
Hi, you can follow me at Havoc Rose and Havoc with a K on Instagram, Twitter, and also Twitch. I actually stream now because I'm just here. Every Tuesday, which is today, this episode is going up, I stream BioShock at 7:30 p.m. PT, and I usually go for 2 or 3 hours, depending on how tired I get, because I get really scared. And we have a lot of fun adventures. Other than that, mostly just doing some summer gaming things, which I can't talk about, obviously, but you can check out that schedule on IGN.
Fantastic. Destin, bring us home.
Yeah, my personal stuff over at youtube.com/the Destin channel. I've been streaming less regular on Tuesdays and Thursdays just because of life. But twitch.tv/Destin and mixer.com/Destin and the YouTube channel. So for personal stuff there, mostly though, I'm like coordinating a whole bunch of stuff for Summer of Gaming. I'm making sure that the recordings are good. I'm building the templates so that our other producers are able to do the recording software that we're using and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more behind the scenes lately, but that's what I'm working on.
We appreciate
Watch all
it.
the
You're-
Mortal Kombat friendships. Watch all the Mortal
Oh,
Kombat
yeah.
friendships. I did that this morning.
Nice video. Yeah, good job on that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for Destin Legary and Miranda Sanchez, I'm Ryan McCaffrey. This was Podcast Unlocked, episode 445, and we'll see you next week.